Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world today. My name is Jason Flame, host of the Master Motivation Podcast. And God, we got a jam-packed week this week on the Master Motivation Podcast. I'm so excited to have this guest on today, Mr. Corey Coffrin. He and his business partner and wife of 27 years, Elisha Coffrin, own Just for Kicks, home of Coffrin's ATA martial arts and Bloomington's best after school and summer camp. This year, they broke two records, surpassing 400 members, wow, and grossing $1.03 million. They have two sons, Reece and Kyle. About to celebrate 40 years in martial arts in 2012, Mr. Coffrin traveled to South Korea to test for his 6th degree black belt. He currently holds a 7th degree black belt and senior master instructor in Taekwondo, and also holds he is also the communications chair for the ATA's business council and the administrator for Melody Johnson's ATA Skillz program. And by the way, he also holds a level 3 instructor certification in Krav Maga. Amazing martial artist, some great stats there, sir. Happy to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm very honored and was very flattered to be asked. So thank you very much.
Well, and I know at the same time that we want to talk about martial arts and business and all this good stuff. You and I have a passion for something else, and that's professional wrestling.
Absolutely.
I know you want to talk about it, but before we do that, let's just say good morning to our Facebook user who is watching. Please remember, if you do, comment and let us know you're here. Let us know your name and where you're from, and of course, any questions. Since we're live, we'd love to answer any questions that you have. So, Mr. Coffrin, can you talk about how you got started in the martial arts?
So I started, it was a buddy day, and a friend of mine, as a Christmas present, he gave me a free month of martial arts. And I still remember getting the card with the martial arts and the uniform card in it, and went to class. It was actually in 1982 when I went, and so took my first class then, and he left, I stayed, and the rest is history. So been doing it for a little bit.
Wow. So you said that was 1982?
It was actually 82. My ATA number is the ATA number. The first two numbers is your year that you started. The second two numbers is the month that you started. My ATA numbers, the first test that I took was in 1983 in February. So my ATA number is 8302. And
Nice.
So officially
Nice.
my 40th year starts next month.
Pretty cool. Well, it's so funny that you talk about a buddy day and getting that pass. I mean, these are still things that we do in our school today, right? So how cool that's a tried and true lesson just in business. That simple card to invite someone to come and do business with you. Let's talk about the ranks that you hold. 7th degree black belt in Taekwondo, level 3 certification in Krav Maga. How did you bridge the gap between the two? When did you start training Krav Maga?
Well, so I'm a retired police officer, and if you count my MP time, I was a police officer for 24 years. And so when I started working for the state, I was brought onto the training team and became a defensive tactics instructor through PPCT. And then that turned into spontaneous knife defense, ground avoidance, ground escape, and just continued to take all the PPCT courses that were offered and taught them in our department. And so when I retired, a friend of mine who's Chief Master Rick Whitehead suggested to me that I should check out Krav Maga and how easily it would be to bridge the gap between the two. And so went and took the level 1 course, had a ball, and as soon as the other two courses were available, took the other two. And and it's, I don't want to say that I teach solely Krav Maga as much as I kind of employ some of the defensive tactics work that we did as well, because I've had a chance to do that in depth. And but they relate really well together, and they translate on the floor really really easily. And the students have a ball. Just for fun, I ran them through our defensive tactics or certification. I spent 12 weeks. We ran through each individual module. They had a blast, right down to speed cuffing. And I didn't know if that would go over well or not. And they thought that was a blast. They were learning how to handcuff people in under 3 seconds. So
Wow.
It's been fun.
How fun. So you started Taekwondo first in 82. When did you actually start training in Krav Maga, and what year did you start as a police officer?
I started, let's see, started as a police officer. I became an MP or enrolled in the National Guard or enlisted in 1988, and went to basic training in 89. I was on the delayed entry program. I wasn't even out of high school. My dad had to sign for me to join.
Hmm.
And so joined the National Guard in 1988, went through basic training, and I was an MP. And so didn't even ETS before I became a police officer for Charleston Police Department here in Illinois, and worked there for almost 7 years, and then went to work for the Illinois Secretary of State Police, and worked there until 2012, so 12 years there. And the last 7 or 8 years that I worked there, I was on the statewide training team as well.
Wow.
And then the Krav Maga, I'm not sure when I took the first one. I'm not sure. COVID has reset my brain. It was all pre-COVID. I want to say that was 2017, I think.
Okay.
Is when I started with Krav Maga, and then just started taking the certifications as they're available.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, as someone here on Facebook has pointed out, thank you for your service as a police officer. I have lots of friends in law enforcement, and in the Krav Maga world, we tend to work with a lot in law enforcement and personal security. So appreciate your time doing that. It's a tough job. Imagine being a cop in California these days.
Yeah, I made over the years, I really get the itch, once in a while until this last year. But I really wanted to explore the idea of keeping my certification valid, and possibly, go back and maybe work a small town part-time just to keep active in law enforcement. And my wife would always tease me. She's like, "No, wait a minute. If you go and work pickup hours, you're going to be working the worst shifts on the worst days and everything else." So, it was always something I really enjoyed being a cop. It was a lot of fun. It was very beneficial. There were a lot of experiences that I had that meant a lot to me. Being a police officer, and it was a passion of mine for a long time, and that was a really hard decision to decide to finally ultimately retire.
I bet. Any particular stories that you want to share with anyone as a police officer that were both rewarding, and also any that were stressful or kind of over the top?
Got a few. The one that kind of sticks out in my head, this is just funny. This was, I can tell this story now because the statute of limitations is out, but when I first started with Secretary of State Police, when I got transferred, I after the academy, I went to District 3, District 1, which is Chicago. And so I worked there for a year and a half. And while I was there, my house in my hometown didn't sell. And so we had a mortgage down south, and then we had all of our living expenses obviously in Chicago, which was we counted on double, it was triple what we were paying back home. And so it was just we were dirt broke. I mean, just as broke as you can get. And I took a job working security at a Walmart in Joliet. And as a police officer working that security job, you show up, you get clearance from your department to do it. And you show up, you wear your badge, you wear your gun, and your sole job is just make sure the security guards don't get beat up. I mean, that's your only job. And so it was a pretty easy job. We got paid really well. And when security got overwhelmed, then we might step up and help out once in a while. But typically our job was just to maintain peace, and make sure nobody got hurt. So one day the security guard was busy, and I was standing at the front door to kind of help out. And these two guys go walking by, and they, for whatever reason, just set off my, if you talk to any police officers, they tell you they've got a sixth sense. They set off your radar. And I just, for some reason, I just felt it. Something's wrong here. The way they were eyeballing me as they were walking out. And as they got past, they both had one was carrying a bag. They both passed. I only saw one check out. And once they got past me, they both laughed like something like I totally missed something.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, so I turned and said, "Hey guys, do you mind if I take a look at your receipt?" And they both took off, and one went
Oh.
one way, one went the other. And so the kid with the bag, I chased him down and snagged onto him. And he had the receipt for one Slim Jim, and I noticed that they were both eating one. And I, okay, simple, simple retail theft. I'll just turn it over to security, let them deal with it. And so as I've got him, and this guy is he was 18, 19 years old, full grown man, but just kid. And he rears back like he's going to take a poke. And I said, don't, don't turn something simple into a felony. Don't do that.
Right.
And he does. And so I passed it, hooked his arm, spun him, got him in an arm bar, walked him back into the Walmart, and I walked him into the security office. And as I'm trying to get him in, we're waiting for the door to buzz because it was a sealed door. And while I'm waiting for them to buzz the door, the kid takes a poke at me again. And so I grabbed him, spun him, threw him down, did the Ric Flair knee drop, on his front back. And so in the process of doing that, I love telling the story. It's just funny. As I put him against the wall to then spin him back, the employee of the month frames that they have hanging on the wall there at
Mm-hmm.
Walmart. I put his head through the frame, and he had the frame around his neck when I came down. And so I was waiting for the girl at the counter to buzz me in. She finally buzzes me in. Now the security guard was in there because he was already dealing with another shoplifter. And so I walked him in, sat him down, and I'm telling him, "Man, why'd you do that? He made a huge mistake." And so the security guard turns to me and he says, "What do you have?" And I said, "Well, it was a simple retail theft. One guy, one purchase. The receipt says one. He had one. His buddy had the other. They took off as soon as I tried to approach him. Simple retail theft." And he's like, "Okay, no problem." And so he takes the bag that the guy had, and he looks at the bag, reads the receipt, and then he looks at the Slim Jim that the kid had on him, and he pulls me aside. He's like, "Oh, you need to talk. You need to look at this. You need to look at this." "Okay, what's up?" And he shows me the receipt. I'm like, "Yeah, exactly. They bought one." And he's like, "Yeah, look at the package." And I looked at the package and flipped it over, and it said FO and an ON. So it's 2 for 1. You pulled them apart. I said, "What the hell? Why the hell did you guys run?" And the guy's like, "Oh." I'm like, "When? Why? If you didn't do anything wrong, would you take a poke at me?" "Oh." And I'm thinking to myself, "God, this is going to be bad. This is going to be bad. This is going to be bad." And Joliet PD was already on the way. And I always hate the idea of arresting somebody just for solely resisting, and so I was just thinking to myself, "God, this is going to be the worst report in the world to write. I hate this." And, but I mean, I'd already done a hands-on arrest, so I had to. And so I called dispatch just to follow procedure, since I made the custodial arrest.
Mm-hmm.
Called and had them go ahead and run him and check for warrants. And it turned out he was wanted. And so when Joliet PD showed up, they're like, "What do you got?" And I said, "I picked this guy up for a warrant and resisting, but I'm not going to charge him for resisting. Just take the warrant." And he said, "No, that's not true. That's not true." So
Oh man.
that was the only reason why he ran. But it was just one of those, oh my gosh, but it ended up working out. But this I can't imagine being in law enforcement today, because I tell that story. It's one of my favorite stories to tell because I think it shows how police officers are human and
Mm-hmm.
how even sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But the intent and the intention is always honest. And I received a few compliments over the years that I was one of the fairest people somebody ever dealt with, and that was something that really meant a lot to me because it's just, I've always tried to live my life with integrity, and it just means a lot.
Well,
But
that's
that's
part of the martial arts, as well, right? That integrity factor comes out in probably in your upbringing as well. But yeah, what a story that is, that how things turned out. But a good compliment too, to be a fair person. I mean, as a father, that would be a huge compliment. As an instructor, that would be a good compliment, right? So
yes.
um, I appreciate that. And thank you, Roseanne. Roseanne Azatat watching. Appreciate all your comments. And she's joining us on the conversation today. Anybody else that's joining us here live today, if you have any questions, any comments, please post those for us. And feel free to share the video as well. So we were just talking about, an experience as a police officer that that started out a little weird, right? Went sideways, and then turned out that it was the right thing anyway. How about an experience that was rewarding as a police officer? I'm sure that there's been many times where maybe you've had to save somebody, or some special recognition for a job well done.
Mhm.
Anything else you could talk about from there?
I think my favorite, if you talk about rewarding experiences, probably my very favorite thing to do. Every year when I worked at Charleston PD, we did the Shop with a Cop, and even
Mm.
when I went on to Secretary of State Police, I still came back and did that, several times. Where for people who aren't familiar with that program, you take underprivileged children who normally wouldn't have a Christmas,
Mhm.
and take them to the locals. We would always take them to Walmart, and we'd have a budget. And one of the parameters being we had to start off by buying them a coat, and then once they had their coat, then we would spend the remainder, depending on what our budget was that year. Usually it was around $100. I think now they're doing two,
Mhm.
and get them a toy. Get them. It was a lot of fun, because for some of these kids, that was the first time they'd ever been shopping for anything for themselves.
Mhm.
And the afterwards we would always do a pizza party with them, and it was just that was the best experience, and something I really enjoyed doing when I was a cop.
Well, fortunately, I was exposed to this program, Shop with a Cop, and
Mhm.
a good friend of mine, Tom Means, who happens to be one of our city councilmen here in Moorpark, California, invited us to the Shop with a Cop event just this past year, and it was just amazing to see the stories and the testimonies from both the kids and from the cops. I mean, how rewarding that is. And what I really liked about it is it took some kids that were underprivileged, or may potentially be on the wrong path, and to see a police officer in such a positive light, right, and see a police officer as a friend and someone that is helping. I mean, how cool it is for that cop to have that experience to give to this child, but for that child to see a policeman or policewoman walk them around the store and buy, like you said, buy a coat. I think it is $200 now that each child.
Mhm.
I think they do the same thing. Go to the local Walmart, and that event was. It was a gratifying event to be a part of and to be able to donate and give to, because there are definitely some kids in need, and we don't always know it. We just don't always see it and know what's going on in their lives. So I think that is a great program. We got another Facebook user. Back in the 1980s, what was the biggest challenge of being a police officer?
I'm not that old. I started in '94, not in the '80s.
Yeah,
But
we're trying to age you.
yeah, um, I think that back. I don't think yeah, I don't want this to be misunderstood, because in today's society, everything's under scrutiny now. And where I was going with my earlier comment about coming back part time
Hmm.
was, when I was a cop, it wasn't, I mean, it certainly wasn't the '70s where everything was really crazy, but in the '90s we were appreciated by the public. Um, we I mean, we could do our job, not catch a whole lot of scrutiny. There
Hmm.
weren't people running around behind us with cameras trying to take a small snapshot of what happened, and then
No,
try to make that
not
into
many
something
people had
new.
these. Not
No,
many people
no.
had these, right? Could you
Hey,
imagine?
one of my favorite stories to tell is when my wife and I started dating. I just got hired by Charleston PD, and then met my wife shortly thereafter. And one of my favorite stories to tell is I was balling back in the day because I had a bag phone. And so man, when I picked her up in my Mustang convertible with my bag phone, baby, that was the way to go. Yeah. But being a cop, I think it was much simpler back then, back in the '90s, because when you did a traffic stop, you didn't have to stop and then do a a traffic stop report, which is standard now, it just wastes time. All that information's on the citation. It's just another way. It The job could be a lot easier and could be a lot simpler if it was just allowed to manage itself. But unfortunately, people who are outside of law enforcement try to come in and try and circumvent when you've got less than 1% that make a mistake, less than 1% that are the ones we need to weed out of the job. But that less than 1% is causing the whole profession to be so, I mean, just so complicated for no reason, because it's, in the end, it's a job like anything else, and there are people that show up, do the job, go home, and that's that's the end of it. There are other people that show up, do the job, and it affects them deeply. There are some people that show up, do the job once, and they're like, holy crap, this job is not for me, and take off. And I'm still really good friends with a couple of guys that happened to them, where they wanted to get involved in law enforcement, couldn't wait, spent their whole life wanting to be a cop. They did it for about 6 months, and they're like, wow, this shit sucks. It takes a special personality, to be able to deal with. I mean, geez, in one shift you could deal with, like I got sent to a lady's house one time because the ambulance was delayed and showed up, and she delivered a baby right in front of me.
Wow.
And hell, I was 22 years old. I mean, baby. But I mean, you could deal with that, and then the next call would be, dead body, and then the next call would be an accident. I just, and then the next call would be you're dealing with, juvenile in need, and you have to be as soft as possible right after you just had the most crazy experience in the world. And so the people that were able to turn it on and turn it off could make it work. And the people that had a hard time resetting in between calls, those are the ones that I think they would have trouble in one way or another.
Right.
So,
well, and as you're talking about these things, one of the things you hear most, and more common now, I believe, with law enforcement, police officers, is their mental health. Talk about the difference over the last several decades in how the mental health of police officers and law enforcement has changed.
well, okay, so ask me what it was like back in the in the 90s versus today. If you went to EAS, the employee assistance system, if you got involved in EAS, you were broke. You were broken somewhere. That was a perception. You didn't get counseling. The only people that went to counseling were people that had made a mistake or were really having a hard time. And back in the day, we used to jokingly call it the rubber gun club. Oh yeah, he's in the rubber gun club. Give him time, he'll be gone. And you didn't get counseling, you didn't get help. You didn't talk about your feelings. People, it's kind of fun. I still catch this to this day. When you talk about the police officer sense of humor, and I'll make jokes about the most insensitive jokes in the world, just because that's how he used to process it.
Right.
And so, like, without getting too graphic, but an example of that would be, only cops do this. I went to a suicide call one time, and the guy had shot himself, and his brain, he used a shotgun in his mouth, opened his head up literally like a banana. His brain came straight out of his head, hit the ceiling, landed in the ceiling fan. You could tell by the blood splatter, and sprayed everywhere. And then the brain, or the biggest chunk of it, fell in the laundry basket next to him. And so literally, I jokingly tell this story, but this kind of goes with that cop mentality. Every police officer that came in that room while we're waiting for the coroner to show up to see what had happened, every police officer that came in, they looked at the basket and went, "Oh, 2 points," because he made a basket. But it wasn't because we were being insensitive. It was because that was how we processed and dealt with it.
Right.
Nowadays, there's a lot of, nowadays there's they're depending on the call or depending on the severity of the call or what the outcome was, there's
Hmm.
mandatory counseling.
Right.
And I think that's a good thing. Um, I that it's far more embraced than it ever was before. And, I think that changes for the better, and giving people, that opportunity to
Hmm.
get help if they need it.
For sure.
Um, good. And it's not as looked down upon. So, that would definitely be something that has changed, I think, definitely for the better.
Hmm. Well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. Well, we got a lot of comments coming in as you're telling this story. Thank you, Jose Escobar, for watching today. Dana Abbott is watching. Lori Klink is watching. She says she greatly appreciates you, and you've helped her granddaughter in so many different ways. Want to start
Wow,
talking
that's
about
awesome.
that. Let's. And man, that's a tough thing to process with the story you just told, and without being insensitive to it or just
Mhm.
brushing it off. Number one, again, thank you for your service as a police officer and your time spent in law enforcement. Um, I feel very strongly that we need to continue to appreciate what you guys go through and how tough a job it can be at times. So again, thank you. But let's switch back to the martial arts a little
Yes,
bit.
sir.
You just had a comment that you've helped a granddaughter, you've helped children, you've helped men, women, couples. I mean, listen, we do it all as martial arts instructors sometimes. We can be a counselor at times, right? We can be that ear that listens to our students' problems. So, when was it that you became a martial arts instructor after training for how many years?
It was in 1999. I was in the process. My uh, I was given an opportunity to purchase a school,
Hmm.
and I passed. Didn't It just for whatever reason didn't seem like the right time for me, and
Hmm.
so I was still a cop at the time. And uh, right after I passed on that, and I kind of thought, well, I'll just be a black belt, just be a teacher, and that's it. I won't be a school owner. And a another school owner that I knew was wanting to retire, and he said, hey, I've got this program. Um, do you want it? You can just have it.
Hmm.
All you have to do is pay for the school license through the ATA and just take it.
So it was
And
not planned. It was not planned that you were going to be a school owner.
yeah, it was not intentional at all. I'd actually given up on it. I thought, yeah,
Hmm.
I'll just be a cop, and just keep kicking when I want to and enjoy it.
Hmm.
Um, and so that was back in '99 when that happened. And my wife and I ran a club in Effingham, Illinois, for um, right at a year and a half, 2 years, and that's when I got hired by Secretary of State Police and got moved to Chicago. So we had to pass that one along.
Hmm.
And thank you, sir. I saw Jaron Webb's comment, and I appreciate
Hmm.
it. But so we moved to Chicago, and I got transferred back down south, and then uh, another, just timing just being perfect when we moved back down south, back to my hometown area. Uh, the school that I was originally looking at became available again, and this time I took it, and so went ahead and purchased that school. And my wife and I worked that school. Let's see, we purchased it in 2003, 2002. We purchased that one in 2002, and we worked that program until 2008, and then we decided. Long story short, uh, I was the defensive tactics instructor for my department, and I was teaching a class, and my assistant didn't make it that day. And so it was just me teaching the class. So I was trying to do the primary and the secondary instruction at the same time. And so I got these group of guys, and I'm trying to teach how to do a shoulder pin. And in the process of trying to explain it, he lifts my arm at the wrong time and tore my rotator cuff.
Oh.
And so I was off work for 6 months. And so uh, during that 6 months, when I had a chance to work the school with my wife, 6 months full time while I was off, even though I was in a sling and swath, but I could still, work the counter and do the other part.
Hmm.
Found that we really had a passion for it. And so we we decided we weren't going to make a living, the two of us, doing this full time in Mattoon, Illinois, which was where we were living at the time. So we needed to sell that program and move to a bigger community. So we moved here to Bloomington, and sold that school and moved here. And then we had the second brightest thing we ever did was that's how I met you, was we joined Maya
Mm-hmm.
and had a chance to meet Mr. Metzger. And, he was our business consultant for 5, almost 6 years, I want to say. And, well, 6 years, because obviously we did 6 full years, but, um, and he helped us grow our program. And, we've been on a steady path of growth ever since. And so, if I had to name the 5 people that have influenced our business world the most, I would first I'd have to say Jeff and Tina Newberry have been tremendous influences on us. They're the ones, my instructor, Jeff Newberry, he was a police officer in Mattoon when I was a police officer in Charleston, which is how we met.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we knew each other through martial arts. We didn't know each other, but that was how we
Right.
actually got to know each other. And when he retired from law enforcement, that was when I was like, and I don't want to sound terrible, I'm just being real, but I was like, well, wait a minute, if he can do it, I can do it. I can do this. I can do this. And so, he was what inspired me to follow that. So definitely have to give him credit for that. Mr. Metzger was phenomenal, and the guidance that he gave us. He was one who took us from a mom and pop's operation to a professional organization, to a professional operation where we could actually sustain ourselves and have a quality program at the same time.
Right.
Then shortly after we left Maya, we had some personal issues going on, and so we ended up closing our second location. And I don't want to say I lost focus, but I just needed a little push in the right direction. And
Right.
so a mutual friend suggested to me, "Have you gone to one of Master Clark's business summits?"
Mm-hmm.
And no, I haven't. And well, as I again, I everything happens for a reason. Things just happen to time out and fall in place for a reason.
Right.
So uh, it was suggested to me the next time you get a business mastermind, you get the opportunity to go to one of his business masterminds, go. And like the irony would have, it happened to come available like within days. And so, I went down to Jacksonville and spent 3 days doing a business intensive with Grandmaster Clark. And that was monumental. It really changed how we operated. And, because it helped us. Mr. Metzger gave us the business systems. Master Clark showed us how to implement them,
Mm-hmm.
very well, and doing it one-on-one there at Karate American. I could see how it worked. It was great. So that was amazing. Then following that, in 2017, we joined Success Team and, Success Team coaching. And that was, great because that showed us how to expand our business in other areas. So even though we're in a town of 75,000, we could operate like we were a much bigger program.
Mm-hmm.
And, and so that gave us, that gave us such an edge, by diversifying our program, being able to bring in more revenue because, especially now with the economy doing what it is and everything, the prices just keep going up. And I don't remember who told me this, but I heard the equation saying the statement that money is freedom. And so obviously we're trying to control our costs, but by being able to have a cash reserve,
Mm-hmm.
um, there was a company that was going out of business. They were selling their belt stock. And so I was able to purchase their entire belt stock for pennies on the dollar. And, I wouldn't, because we had the cash reserve, I was able to do that. And then that's been one of the ways I've been able to offset costs
Mm-hmm.
because I can self-resource, for a lot of equipment. And so that just one of the ways that we've been able to keep keep
Mm-hmm.
keep everything under control in this crazy time. But
Right. Well, so you said 4. There has to be one more.
so my platoon sergeant in Desert Storm, Sergeant Fogelman, he just I this is okay. I'll bare my soul here. I was a bad person when I was a young man. I had 2 girlfriends at the same time when I was in Desert Storm, and so I was writing 2 sets of letters every day. I'd send one to this girl and one to this girl. And um, Sergeant Fogelman, and he was in the bunk next to me, and he saw me stamp one, stamp the other, And I was getting ready to mail him, and he turned to me and he he was the one who told me that integrity was the most. I can't quote him because I don't know who's watching, but he said, hey, you're messing with two people's lives. How you operate has to be how you would operate in front of anyone. And if you're living in secrets, it's going to bite you in the ass one day. And so you can't do that. That can't be you. You're better than
Hmm.
me. And so that just sunk in. It meant the world to me. And so whenever I do things, I try to do things how I would want somebody to treat me, how I would expect somebody else to treat me.
Hmm.
You know, um, so it's just been a just kind of a litmus test on any decisions that I make. Is that the fairest decision I can make, and is it the most honest decision I can make?
You quoted, or maybe not fully quoted, this person, but you said that he told you you're better than that. That kind of that comment sticks out to me because I remind my kids that a lot when they make a mistake or they do something silly or stupid. I remind myself that when I find myself struggling with something, and maybe reacting in a way that I don't feel is appropriate, right? You're better than that. We tell our students, come on, you're slacking in class. You're better than that. I just think that that's a pretty powerful statement, although it's very simple to
Mhm.
know that you're better than that. And I think it's a good quote to kind of push ourselves a little bit more each and every day.
We just did the skills workshop last week, and
Hmm.
that's one of the reasons why we had to delay today, because we were on our way back between that and last week was like conference after conference. But we did the skills workshop, and one of the things that Melody Johnson said, she said, we're trying to teach people how to be the best versions of themselves.
Hmm.
And when you think about training, when you think about uh, life in any way, I mean, all of that, if you look at it from that point of view, getting people to be
Hmm.
the best versions of themselves, because I being a black belt is not about meeting a checklist of standards. It's about your own personal achievement. You know, I'll have one student who is special needs, and the memory process just simply isn't there. So
Hmm.
having a form checklist where you missed the 14th move, I can't give you your black belt, doesn't count. And then likewise, when you've got somebody that they give 100% every day on the mat, every single day, 100%. I've never, if you never have to remind them to try hard, and then they have that one flub, when
Hmm.
they're breaking their boards, and they don't break their board, or in their sparring they trip and fall or something like that, that they earned their grace by their work. And it's about being their best version of themselves and making sure that did you have a transformation from white belt to black belt?
Hmm.
See that? And if we did, that's what I'm looking for. Not
Right.
not you know not can you demonstrate, you know can you demonstrate Psalm 1, 2, 4 different ways? No, that's a mastery of a skill, but it's not personal growth, and that's what we're looking for.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. You brought up five people's names, four of which I want to go back and just give them a shout out again. Mike Metzger. I mean, there's not much more to say. Mike Metzger is the man in our industry, in my mind. My coach, my mentor, someone that definitely changed my life. You talked about the Newberries, great people, Jeff and Tina Newberry. They're coming up on the show actually in September.
Awesome.
Got them
Awesome.
booked out a little bit, but definitely want to highlight them. Chief Master Clark, amazing,
Grand.
amazing gentleman, and Grandmaster,
Yes.
Grandmaster, and he he's someone, by the way, that always intimidated me, right? It was I was
You and
very
me both.
right. You kind of want to talk to him, but you're kind of afraid. And I remember distinctly, it was at a martial arts super show, which I'm so bummed that we're not going to have one this year, but plenty of other events to attend. But I remember he was sitting down with Ernie Reyes Jr., and they're just having a conversation, and it's at the Maya booth, and so I'm like, oh, go sit down and just kind of listen in a little bit. And I start listening in, and he just starts talking to me and including me in the conversation, and we're just having this really good conversation. And I walked away feeling like, man, just when you think like someone's too intimidating to talk to, especially someone at his level, right?
Mhm.
Put yourself out there and approach them and be part of the conversation. Yeah, that was a great conversation. Had him on the show as well, and he dropped a ton of knowledge. And you brought up the success team, and I believe you're talking about Dwayne and Lauren Spires, right? Who Dwayne Spires has been on the show. Really fun guest to have on here. Got the best beard in the business. Not sure if he still has it. Does he still have the beard?
Nope. He's got
He shaved.
he's got the beer, but it's not the ZZ Top thing.
Oh man, that was like the beard, man. That was crazy. But good guy. I didn't really know him real well before the interview, but having him on the show uh, taught me to have a lot of respect for what he does because he's doing things, very different than the average program out there. He's got something different, something unique. So if you guys are watching this live now, go back and check out some of those interviews. Check out, Master Clark. Check out the Spires. Check out the Newberries coming up, and check out Mike Metzger's interview. But you brought up something else when you were talking about all of that, and you talked about this sergeant that you served in Desert Storm as well. So not only were you a police officer, but you served in Desert Storm.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about your experience.
Oh, wow. I was in the Guard, and like I said, I joined when I was 17 years old. My best friend, he was a year ahead of me in school. Um, he so he'd already joined the Guard, and so I wanted to join too. And so I talked my dad into signing me up, even though I was too young.
Uh-huh.
And so my dad went with me to the recruiting office. I got signed up at 17 instead of 18. And the intention was I was supposed to go to basic training between my junior and senior year, and I was supposed to go to AIT after I graduated. And my birthday was June 20th, so I didn't turn actually 17 until June 20th. So that was too late for me to get to basic training and graduate and get back to school before school started. So that was one of the rules they had on delayed entry.
Mm-hmm.
So I did my first year in the Guard. I did without even going through basic training. So I mean, literally, I walked around. I was slick sleep private. I couldn't do anything. It was the most boring year of my life. But that was perfect for a high school kid because I was too stupid to do anything else. So that was kind of what set me up. I got back from basic training in November of 99 or 89. And then just got signed up for college, got started, and did my first year in college. And in November of 1990, I got a phone call at work. I was a busboy at a local bar and grill, and I got a phone call at work. Hey, Corey, we got a phone call for you. And I was like, okay. And I picked up the phone. A Raging Bull. Is this for real? And that was the code for we've been activated. Is this for real? And Raging Bull. Okay. And then they gave me the date and the time I was supposed to show up. And I was numb. My best friend, he just gotten a phone call himself. He actually met me at work. And I was still just kind of in shock. Oh God,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to war. And so, it was just something you watched on CNN before that. It was just an air war. It wasn't even an air war back then. It was just a buildup.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got activated November 15th, and we went to Fort Benjamin Harrison, Indiana, which is where we did our train up and, got our mobilization, equipment and everything else ready to rock and roll. And we flew over. We were waiting for our Humvees to get given. We were actually still in Jeeps, back then. And so we were waiting for our Humvees to be shipped. So we hadn't even seen our Humvees yet. We were going to see them in Desert Storm when we got there. So we left in January, and when we were on our layover in Ramstein, Germany, between flights, they took us off the plane, fed us, and when we were at the Air Force base, there in Ramstein, we were watching on CNN. The air war started, and so we were like, "Wow, this is real. We're really going into this." The first blast of what was really going on was as we were flying in country. 6-7 hours later, when we were flying in country, we had to do a combat landing, which you're in a C-130 and it flies. And then when they get to the landing zone, they just dip the nose and go straight down so they can avoid anti-aircraft missiles. And so they come straight down and then they pull it up at the last minute and land. And that was scarier than hell. And like it was like that scene from Aliens, when they're doing the combat drop. It was just like that. It was crazy. And so, that was when I made some of the best friends of my life, in Desert Storm. And then we were back home in May. So we were actually, my unit was attached to the 1st Infantry Division, and we were actually in the ground war. So we were part of the Hail Mary that came through Iraq and came down into Kuwait. And so we collected and transported. I didn't know if this would come up or not. So I put it on we all have a Facebook page, the 233rd MP Company Facebook page. And so I put on the Facebook page, does anybody remember how many prisoners we collected and transported? And I got every answer from 2,000 to 5,000. I don't remember how many, it was 30 years ago, but I know it was in the thousands of prisoners that we collected in the 72 hours that we did the Hail Mary. It was insane because the air war had pulverized them so much and psychologically beat them. So that when the ground war actually started, they were just literally just running to us to drop everything and just come running because they thought they were dead. And so they would, surrender to us, in waves. And so we just kept taking, we actually were thinking that it was a military tactic where we thought they were surrendering to us only because they were trying to tie us all up with prisoners. And so our forward advance would get delayed. And so that was one of the concerns too, and so every time we, would pull somebody off the front to take a group back, the concern being is that, are we being set up here? And so, it was just, quick, drop them off the battalion and get right back here. And so it was insane. I got my bus driver's license in Desert Storm. So I learned how to drive a Greyhound because it was inhumane. Even though they took the soldiers in deuce and a halves everywhere we went, they move us in deuce and a halves, but the prisoners we had to take in Greyhounds. So I got my Greyhound license.
Well, I mean, amazing experiences that you're describing right now, and I'm thinking to myself, you served you served in the military, you served in law enforcement, you serve as a martial arts instructor. When did your life of service begin, or when did that develop? Was that learned from family members, mom, dad? Because again, you've lived a life of service in my mind from what you're telling me in these stories and your experiences. What has drawn you to that lifestyle?
You're a good man.
And my wife's sitting next to me. She says, "You're a good man." So
I would have to agree with everything that you've done and everything that you do. I think that a great trait of good people is people that do for others. And you've done a lot of that. I guess I'm just trying to find out, was that something that was taught? Was that something that was encouraged? Or was that something that you developed by surrounding yourself by people that are like that?
So my mom, she's my whole childhood was growing up around politics. My mom was a local politician. She was the county clerk in our home county, and my mom, in her quest to be the best county clerk that she could be, because they do all the voting, and they record all the ballots as they come in and everything else and post the results. My mom was really determined to be as fair as possible to both sides. And and even though she was a Republican, she wanted to make sure that she was always as fair and as approachable with the Democrat candidates as she was with the Republicans. To her credit, she was one of the only people. She was the only Republican that would ever get invited into the Democrats' annual picnic. And so, I guess that at least that sense of fairness I got from my mom. Because my mom was just always determined to do the right thing no matter what, and treat people well, no matter what. And so she had her own interests, but she would always set them aside, because her professionalism had to prevail. And so I guess if I had to learn that behavior from anybody, Was a life in service, was that intentional? No, it wasn't. I didn't think about it until you said that. It's what I do. I being the, you know, when I was growing up, I was the short fat kid, and you know, I got picked on all the time, and I hit a growth spurt in high school. I came into high school. I just know this goes, you know, I just remember this random stupid fact, but when I went into high school, I was 5'6". When I came out of high school, I was 6'1".
Oh,
You know, I think my weight was the same though, but
that's a good thing.
yeah, but I ran the whole gambit. You know, I can remember walking the halls being terrified to make eye contact with everybody, and then I remember my senior year, it was imperative to me that no one got picked on in my presence. I couldn't stand it. It made me mad enough. And so it just, and I think that's what made me want to be a police officer more than anything else, was because I wasn't going to tolerate that, and it was important to me. And so maybe being a police officer was a carryover from that, and then being in martial arts, you know, and I'm sure you go through this too. You know, I have a shelf in my office where I keep like presents that people give me, like little knickknacks and stuff like that. I just have a little trinket shelf. Behind that shelf, I have a little stack of envelopes where it's my testimonial letters that mean something to me that I've kept over the years. And I've got one from one of my adult students who finally had the courage to leave her husband, and she was in an abusive relationship, you know, and finally had the courage to walk away. And, you know, and she just wrote me this beautiful little letter about, you know, finally getting the courage to do that, you know, and I had a small part in that. You know, I had one of my students who was a bouncer at one of the local bars here in town. I was teaching one-step sparring, and, you know, so they come at you with a punch and you sidestep and round kick punch and, you know, and follow up with a side kick. But then I always like to take a real world twist to it and say, okay, here's how we perform it. Now, if somebody's coming at you and you're wearing your blue jeans, you're not kicking up here. So let's bring the kick down here. Let's do it as a common peroneal kick. So we're going to follow up common peroneal, step through, and then we're going to take them out at the tibial and then push back. And so we did the one step, how it's supposed to be performed, and then we did like a practical end of the one step. And he came to me one day and he's like, I got to talk to you. And I was like, and he goes, that shit works. And I was like, well, God, I hope you're getting something out of it.
Right.
But those are the talks that mean something, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
If it's a physical connection, or if it's, you know, when you have a parent that comes up to you with tears in their eyes and they say, this happened to us. This was what inspired me to be a full-time school owner. This moment right here. I had one of my little black belts. His name was Andrew Blanchett. Little bitty, God bless him, wasn't 100 pounds soaking wet to save his life. I mean, this kid was just rail skinny, and but just he was a little spitfire, man. He was a great kid. Loved him. And his dad came up to me. He took a couple weeks off in the summertime, and he went to a church camp. And he came back, and I guess he ended up being his church camp's group leader of, you know, the team leader or squad leader or whatever you call it. And Dad came up to me, and he said, I need to talk to you. And I was like, yeah, what's up? And he said, this year, my son, I think he made the honor roll or high honors, earned his black belt, and then that experience at church camp. And he just started bawling. And he said, this is all thanks to you guys. You know, and that meant the world to me. You know, that's the kind of profound impact on people that you want to have, you know, that you dream about, you know, and so I think moments like that mean the most.
Definitely. Well, listen, we're getting down to the last couple minutes, guys. If you are watching this live and you have any questions for Mr. Coffrin, please ask those questions. I did promise to have a discussion on professional wrestling, so we got to get into this for just a couple minutes. And I got students walking in right as we speak, getting ready to take class here today. But as you were telling the story, and we were talking about service, I pulled up this quote, and since Martin Luther King Jr. Day was just yesterday, one of the quotes that my wife posted actually says, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? And this is where I was going with asking you, you know, what prompted you to serve in the military, to be a law enforcement officer to teach martial arts, and then you talked about your mom and how your mom was a a public servant, and how she was fair. That's the second time we've talked about being fair. We talked about you being a fair person, and you mentioned even though she was a Republican, she would be able to see both sides. And how amazing would that be if more people could learn that side of politics? But we're not going to take the show there today.
Yeah.
Let's finish up. Who is your favorite pro wrestler of all time?
Wow. Ric Flair.
Ric Flair.
100%.
Woo! Gotta
100%
do
Ric
that.
Flair. Got a chance to
Ric-
meet him at the Super Show.
Yep.
What was it? Was it 2018 when he was there?
Oh,
He got
I
sick.
forget.
Like he got sick like a week later, and that's when he
Yep,
almost died. You know.
that's right.
But I had so much fun because I had my diamond ring. I had I had my Folex. I don't have a real Rolex, but I had Folex. But I had my diamond ring, my Folex, and I had these fake alligator shoes on. And so I went and introduced him. I was like, "Hey, I got to show you something." And so I showed him that. He looks at me and woo, and I woo. So he
Oh,
was my profile picture forever. It was him and I wooing together.
it was amazing. As you may know, I did my second degree black belt testing Krav Maga this weekend, and we had 12 kids testing and 6 adults, and we're doing rehearsals and we're warming up and stuff. And I just, when I get excited and I get pumped up, the woo comes out quite a bit. And I said, I did it. I said, every time I do it, you guys got to do it. And I said, you guys know who that's from? And they're looking at me kind of funny. I said, that's Ric Flair. You know who Ric Flair is? They're like, huh? I'm like, what do you mean you don't know who Ric Flair is? Like, you got to know who Ric Flair is. I would say my favorite wrestler of all time. I mean, I have so many in different genres, but as someone who was able to live out my dream of becoming a pro wrestler, I always really loved Ricky the Dragon Steamboat because he tied in the pro wrestling and the martial arts, and his move set was very simple but very effective. So I always loved him. In the later years, DX was probably one of my favorites. Just the song, the music. I think it was at a time in my life when I was young, and I loved that. I don't know what's a word for it, right? Like it just stood out. I love
Yeah.
them. Ultimate Warrior was amazing. Hulk Hogan, of course. And by the
You
way,
know, I just
anybody
got back from
watching?
Clearwater. And literally every single time I go to Clearwater, I stop by Hogan's Beach Shop with my
Do you?
fingers crossed, hoping I'm going to finally meet him. That's the one major pro wrestler I haven't met that I really want to meet is Hogan.
Hmm.
And if you're
Yep.
listening, Hulk, please just show up.
Yeah, right. Well, I was saying, I was going to say, if anybody's listening and you got a connection, and maybe we put Hulk Hogan on the podcast, that would be
Yeah,
amazing.
there you go.
Super cool, right? You never know. But
Yeah.
yeah, pro wrestling as a kid, watching pro wrestling, those before I really knew what martial arts was, and a lot of the martial arts competitors and you know all these people that we've been talking about throughout the show, those became my superheroes. But as a kid, like the 80s, I mean, pro wrestling was it. Those were superheroes. I liked Hulk Hogan, Roddy Piper, Macho Man. I liked them all way better than I like Superman, Batman, or any of that. I wasn't really into comic book. I was like, these guys are the real deal.
80s, 90s wrestling was far superior. And it's funny that you said that Ricky Steamboat was your favorite and Ric Flair was mine because that rivalry they had in 89 to 90 was phenomenal. I
Best.
loved that the matches they had. All
Oh
three
yeah.
of them were fantastic.
Yeah, they were amazing. They're amazing. Well, listen, we're going to have to close it up right now, but thank you guys for watching here live, and look forward to seeing you guys coming back tomorrow. Got another interview tomorrow, and I'll be back on in just about an hour or so with my Tuesday thoughts with Danny Cleary. So tune back in. But Mr. Coffrin, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me today, and look
My
forward to
pleasure.
catching up again soon.
Yes, sir. Anytime. Looking forward to it.
All right. Well, guys, that's it for today. We'll see you next time. Go out and make it a great day. Take care.